Most people walk into Suzume thinking they're about to watch a romantic road trip movie with supernatural elements. And look, on the surface, that's kind of what it looks like. But I want to make the case that Makoto Shinkai was actually going for something much deeper. Suzume is his attempt at his own Shinto ritual, a ceremony for healing places and people the world has decided to leave behind. And when you see it that way, nothing about this film looks the same. We talk about rebuilding like it's the end of the story. Like, once the roads are fixed and the homes are restored, life starts moving again.
Hey, I brought you your dinner!
But what if rebuilding isn't about going back? What if it's about learning to live with what we can't replace? In Japan, March 11th, 2011 began like any normal day. But then the earth began to shake. Not for mere seconds, but 6 agonizing minutes. Long enough for the fear to settle in. Then came the wall of water. It surged inland for several kilometers, lifting entire towns and people off of their foundations, sweeping them back into the ocean, many never to be seen again.
そして今これ陸上の様子ですけれども、家が津波で流されている様子がわかります。
Over 1,000 children would go home to a place that no longer had parents waiting for them. In the years following, reports would reveal that 1,600 children lost one or both parents in the disaster. In the time since, Japan has recovered structurally. Roads, railways, and ports have largely been restored. Entire coastlines have been rebuilt with hundreds of kilometers of new seawall, constructed and reinforced with safety in mind, in hopes that another disaster would never repeat itself. Japan has done its best to move forward without forgetting, but there's a question that lingers beneath all that rebuilding. What happens to the places we leave behind? When the waters receded, Tohoku left many towns and buildings derelict. Places once bustling with everyday life now sit empty, as nature slowly reclaims them. In the film Suzume, these places are set pieces for supernatural mayhem. But really, it's making the case that these places aren't just abandoned, they're wounded. In Suzume, we follow a teenage girl who starts seeing doors appear in abandoned places in Japan. But behind the doors is something dangerous, something that, if left unchecked, can cause earthquakes. So she teams up with a man whose job it is to find these doors and close them. But the deeper she goes, the more it becomes clear that this isn't about stopping disasters, it's about something we've been avoiding for a long time. At its core, Suzume is really about rituals. In that sense, Suzume is a modern Shinto myth about healing abandoned places. Now, here's where most people stop when they analyze Suzume. They see the Shinto imagery and they go, oh, that's just Japanese culture. But it's not that simple. Makoto Shinkai is actually drawing on something much more specific, and it completely reframes why these abandoned places matter. In Japan, as a Westerner, it's not uncommon to see something a little unexpected. Maybe a brand new car pulls into a shrine to be blessed, or a construction site receives a purification ritual. Maybe you've heard stories of newly bought cell phones held up just for a moment, as if they too need some sort of divine protection. To an outsider, it might feel a little symbolic or ceremonial, but in Japan, it's a much deeper idea. That the world isn't empty, it's alive. This is the foundation of Shinto. It's a belief that spirits, kami, exist not just in gods or myths, but in the everyday. These spirits can be found in mountains, rivers, homes, and towns. Even the spaces in between we don't even think about. These places don't simply exist, they're inhabited and remembered. So long as people care for them, these places remain at peace. So what happens when that care disappears? When that bustling life is replaced with the stillness of silence? In Shinto, neglect doesn't just leave a place empty, it makes it vulnerable. Every location Suzume visits shares something in common. An abandoned school, a quiet coastal town, an empty amusement park. These ruins have become echoes of places that once held life, but are now frozen in time. But here's the key detail that most people miss. These places aren't dangerous because they're in ruins. They're dangerous because the world has moved on without them. Then there's the doors. In Suzume, the doors aren't just portals, they're boundaries. But to understand them, you really have to understand how boundaries work in Japanese culture. In Japan, thresholds matter. You don't just walk into a sacred space, you pass through something first. That could be a gate, an entrance, a tunnel, some kind of marker that tells you you're in a different world now. Shrines are marked by torii gates, structures not meant to block you, but transform the act of entering. You walk through them, and without realizing it, you've crossed from the ordinary into the sacred. The same idea exists in homes. At the genkin, the entryway, you remove your shoes, not just for cleanliness, but as a quiet ritual, a way of leaving the outside world behind before stepping inside. So it's not just a physical transition, it's a psychological one, separating public and private, living and spiritual, the present and the past. In Suzume, the doors function the same way. They are thresholds between our world and the world we try not to think about. Memory, loss, the unresolved, and like any boundary, they only work if they're maintained, respected, and remembered. And when it's not, the boundary weakens, and something slips through. Which brings us to the worm. In Suzume, the worm is a supernatural force that exists in the other realm that is perpetually always trying to break free. Its release triggers an earthquake. But why a worm? Traditionally, in Japanese folklore, earthquakes are caused by a namazu, a giant catfish living underground. Shinkai doesn't use that mythology as is. He reimagines it to fit the film's emotional themes of grief, collective trauma, and the danger of suppressed memory. Drawing from Haruki Murakami's short story Super Frog Saves Tokyo, where a hero battles a giant worm tied to the social anxiety following the 1995 Kobe earthquake. The worm isn't a monster, it's pressure building beneath the surface. A double metaphor. On one hand, it's the tectonic stress that physically causes earthquakes. On the other, it's the emotional stress beneath a society. And like any buildup of pressure, when left long enough, it erupts. And when the worm rises, it isn't just bringing destruction, it's forcing people to confront what they've buried. So how do we stop it? Suta is a closer, and comes from a long line devoted to finding and sealing these doors across Japan. He doesn't attack the worm. That would be an exercise in futility. Instead, he performs a ritual, speaking to the land, tapping into the memories of what used to be there, homes, people, the lives that once filled these spaces. Because in Shinto, remembrance is respect, and respect restores balance. The act of closing the door is a poetic acknowledgement. It says, I see what you were, I honor it, and now I let it rest. He spends much of the film under a curse that traps him in the form of a broken three-legged chair in Suzume's room, and that detail is not an accident. The significance of the chair can't be overlooked. The chair is a birthday present made by Suzume's mother sometime before the Tohoku earthquake struck, an object that carries enormous weight. It's filled with memories, love, and a version of Suzume's life that no longer exists. It also has 3 legs, and despite that, it can still function even if it's not perfect. Which is kind of the point. As Suzume races across Japan, she's literally carrying her past with her, and that's what makes this film work as a ritual, not just a road trip. Suzume is a girl spending much of the film chasing something she doesn't quite fully grasp, all the while dreaming of a mysterious woman she met as a child that she can't quite remember. But with every door she manages to close, she grows and changes. And while she happens to be saving Japan in the process, Suzume is really learning how to face the loss of her mother and the version of herself that disappeared with her. In a typical third act, the most important door to close would logically be the ancient one beneath Tokyo that unleashes the megaworm. But that's not the case with this film. The closure is much more personal. The most important door is the one tied to her childhood, a place she's been avoiding built around the memory she never fully processed. And when she finally steps through that door, she finds a scared little girl searching for her mother. And suddenly, Suzume realizes the woman she's been seeing in her dreams is actually herself.
Suzume?
And that moment reframes everything.
すずめのお母さん知りませんか？
This otherworld is a commentary on trauma itself. For those who have experienced trauma, it doesn't matter whether it happened yesterday or 15 years ago. The person living it experiences it like it's happening right now.
お母さんもすずめを探してて、きっとすごく心配してるから、早くお母さんのところに行かなきゃいけないんです。すずめ、すずめのお母さんは病院でお仕事してて、お料理と工作が上手で、何でも作ってくれて、すずめ、お家が、
So Suzume does something radical. She becomes the person her younger self needed, reassuring her that everything is going to be okay.
ねえ、すずめ、見て。すずめ、ほら。すずめの椅子だ。
Not that everything is going to be fixed, but that she'll survive the hardship to follow.
お姉ちゃん、誰？私はね、すずめの。
And that's the real ritual behind Suzume. Not closing the doors across Japan, but closing the distance between the little girl she was and the person she is now. Healing isn't forgetting the past. It means facing what hurt you, acknowledging what happened, and moving forward without letting it define you. Suzume feels different because there's no final battle. There's no epic victory against the worm, because the worm can never be truly vanquished, the same way grief never really disappears. What changes is our relationship to it. Japan would go on to rebuild its cities, infrastructure, and coastlines. But how do you rebuild a place emotionally? How do you care for the places that can't be restored? You remember them. You honor them. And when you're ready, you gently close the door. Because some places aren't meant to be reopened, not to forget them, but to finally let them rest.
行ってきます。
Is there a place in your life you're afraid to close the door on? Let me know below. I read all the comments. Thanks for watching.